Good evening. Welcome to the Kent County Board of Adjustment meeting for March 17, 2022, and happy St. Patrick's Day. As we call the public meeting to order, I'm going to ask that you call the roll, make sure we're here.
Thank you. Ms. Hudson?
Here.
Mr. Saunders? Mr. Jenkins?
Here.
Mr. Kusick?
Here.
Mr. Crossan? Mr. Nichols?
Here.
And Ms. Stenny?
Here.
A vote shows 5 present, 2 absent. We do have a quorum.
Thank you. Will you introduce the staff?
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Scott Blair, and I'm one of the planners here with Kent County Planning Services. Also with me to my left is fellow planner Jamie Fensky, and to her left is Mark Kennedy. He will be handling the IT tonight, and hopefully shortly we'll have Mr. Fred Townsend here, who will serve as the board's legal counsel for this evening.
Thank you. At this time, I'm going to ask everyone to rise and pledge allegiance to our flag. Do we have any alterations to the agenda? Okay. So will you introduce the public hearing?
Thank you, Ms. Denny. Good evening again, everyone. My name again is Scott Blair, and I'll preside as the hearing officer for tonight's public hearing. This hearing is being conducted for the purpose of providing the citizens of the county an opportunity to present testimony on these applications before the Kent County Board of Adjustment. Everyone will have an opportunity to speak. This will provide those who wish an opportunity to give their testimony. There is an official recording of these proceedings being made. Therefore, we ask that only one person speak at a time and that they speak clearly. Furthermore, there shall be no cross-examination of any witnesses permitted during the public hearing, but the board can ask the applicant questions after any opposition if necessary. The chairperson of the board has the discretion to allow additional time if deemed to be necessary. To make a statement when your application is called, please use one of the 2 podiums at the front of the room. We have changed things. There are now sign-in sheets there too, because sometimes we can't always understand a person's name or address. So if you would also take the time to just jot your name down and print your address, we'd appreciate that. If you're participating online and wish to give testimony, we will unmute your line so you can speak. For the record, again, please give your name, address, and allow our attorney to swear you in prior to providing any testimony. Copies of any written statements or exhibits used during the hearing should be presented for identification so that they may be included in the permanent record. The procedure on each variance application will be as follows. The legal notice will be read on each case prior to the receipt of testimony. There will be a brief explanation of the application by staff. The board will then receive testimony from all those in favor of the application, followed by testimony of those who may be opposed. Once those persons in favor and those in opposition have had an opportunity to speak, the hearing on that application will be declared closed. Decisions on all applications heard this evening will be made by the board during the business meeting following the public hearing. However, you are not required to remain after the public hearing once your request has been heard and closed. During the business meeting, the board will consider all information of record. A common vote of 4 members of the board shall be required to make a decision on each application. If you do not wish to wait for the business meeting later this evening, you may call Kent County Planning Department tomorrow between the hours of 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. at 744-2471 or check the Kent County Planning Department website to learn of the board's ruling. All applicants will receive written notification of the board's decision. However, this notice may not be mailed out until after the next scheduled meeting. But if approved, you are welcome to apply for any necessary permits prior to receiving this by mail. Please keep this decision in your records for both you and future property owners. The public notice of this evening's hearing was published on February 28th in the Delaware State News. In addition, all of the subject properties were posted with a sign prior to the hearing to further notify the public of the nature of the application. Thank you.
Thank you. This time, we are going to have a statement by Mr. Townsend, our counsel, and the purpose of which is to help those who are going to give testimony this evening an opportunity to understand what is acceptable as testimony before this particular board. Mr. Townsend.
Thank you, Ms. Denny. The considerations that this board must make in determining whether to grant a variance are established by the Delaware Supreme Court in the case known as Quick Check Realty versus Newcastle County. That case identifies 4 considerations. They are: first, the nature of the zone where the property lies; secondly, the character and uses in the immediate vicinity of the property; third, whether removal of the restriction on an applicant's property would seriously affect neighboring properties; and lastly, whether failure to remove the restriction creates an unnecessary hardship or exceptional practical difficulty for the owner in relation to the owner's efforts to make normal improvements to the property. Economic hardship standing alone may justify the granting of an area variance, and the inability to improve one's business or stay competitive may qualify as an exceptional practical difficulty. So other than those 4 considerations, the board is not to consider other matters. And those who are here to testify both in favor of or in opposition to an application are instructed to refrain from bringing to bear matters that are unrelated to those 4 considerations, and particularly with respect to matters involving any type of dispute between a property owner, as this board is not in a position to resolve disputes such as that. So again, the 4 considerations are the nature of the zone where the property lies, the character and uses in the immediate vicinity, whether removal of the restriction creates any serious effect on neighboring properties, and whether failure to remove the restriction creates an exceptional practical difficulty for the owner. Ms. Denny, those are my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Townsend. Okay, so we're going to begin the public hearing when you're ready.
Thank you, Ms. Stenny. Okay, tonight, the first application tonight is A-22-06. Do we have someone here tonight to represent this application? Just raise your hand. Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Okay, again, this is A-22-06, Lawrence P. Sr. and Pamela L. Lewis. They are seeking a variance from the required 25% maximum impervious surface coverage to place a pole building. This property is located on the east side of Corn Crib Road, about 0.3 miles northwest of Gun and Rod Club Road, south of Harrington. It's Levy Court District 6, and it is zoned AR. So you can see from this Exhibit B what the applicants are asking for. So the allowable impervious surface on the property is 5,445 square feet. They have an existing impervious of 4,879 square feet, and they are proposing a building on 900 square feet. So by placing that building, they will be approximately 334 square feet over the impervious, or about 1.53%. So instead of 25, they would essentially be 26.53%, which is the reason for the variance tonight. This is a photograph of the applicant's property and their house in the background. This is looking up north on Corn Crib, and this would be south on that same road. This is the driveway that leads back to where the proposed pole building will be placed, which you'll see in a second. You can see by that cordoned off area with the yellow tape there, that's where the proposed building will be placed. Again, that is another photograph of the area. This just shows you the existing structures on the property and the paved driveway. And this is an aerial of the property, a close-up. You can get a feel, and this is the higher up aerial photograph to get a feel for the character of the area. Okay, if you'd like to come up, Mr. Lewis, and again, please state your name and address and allow our attorney to swear you in prior to testimony. Thank you.
Okay, my name is Lawrence P. Lewis, Sr. I live at 320 Corn Crib Road, Harrington, Delaware, 19952.
Mr. Lewis, do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir. Write this in here.
Mr. Lewis, are you making some last-minute preparations?
Excuse me?
Are you making some preparations for your...
No, I'll just write my name and stuff down on the...
Oh,
Thank you. Yeah, Jamie and I are trying something new tonight. A lot of times we don't hear people's address, and also we've asked them to write them down on a sheet. Sorry about that, Mr. Townsend. We should have alerted you.
That's said that, so...
so when you're ready, it's your
Okay.
turn to tell us what you're doing.
Okay, we're here tonight because we want to get a pole building garage put on our property. For my wife and I, we're the only two that lives there now, and both of us are having quite a few medical problems. And the reason for the garage is trying to clean the drive with bad weather and stuff like that. We both have arthritis bad, and I've already had one knee replaced. So this is the purpose of the garage, so we can put our vehicles in, so we're not trying to clean snow or, you know, bad weather or whatever. So we at least can get in the car if we have to go to the doctors or anything of that nature. Okay, and what we're doing is, now I do have a couple letters from our neighbors, which I've talked to all our neighbors. We've never had a problem with them. We've been there for 30 years. We don't plan on going anywhere else. And like I say, the main purpose is for us to, you know, be able to get out safely, you know, if we have to, you know, do anything.
Okay, so if you want to submit those letters from your neighbors, we'll be happy to take them into consideration. So essentially, the location of this, it appears as though you still have to walk from the pole building to the house.
Right straight to our back door, which is about 20 feet.
Okay. Okay, does anybody else have any questions?
Yes, I do. Mr. Lewis, I have a couple questions. First of all, what will the composition of the pole building be, if you don't mind me asking? Will it look very similar to the modular that's there now? And what will be the contents of the 30 by 30? Will it be primarily parking, or was there anything else going on in there?
Yes, it's the primary parking, and I mean, that's, okay, I'm getting a little confused here. Okay, it's to park our vehicles in. I have a pickup, she has a car, and like I say, the main purpose is just to park our vehicles in. You know, I got a couple toolboxes I'll probably have in there, but other than that, you know, that'd be about the extent of it.
Go ahead.
Staff has indicated that in order to make certain that you don't exceed the 25% maximum, you could conceivably construct a smaller pole barn. Would that smaller construction create a problem for you? And if so,
Well,
how?
I have a full-size truck, and, you know, with her car, and, you know, pulling into a 30-foot building, I mean, the truck is going to take up a lot of room, you know, and be able to walk around the vehicles. That's why, you know, we're saying a 30 by 30.
So a smaller garage, in your opinion, would create a difficulty for you and your wife?
Yes, I mean, you know, if I had to open the doors or something of that nature, you know, it would be a problem.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Lewis, I had one more question. If you were to walk out your front door and look around at the surrounding properties, would they look similar to yours in terms of the pole buildings and things that are on the property?
Yes, all our neighbors, a lot of the neighbors have pole building garages already in the vicinity around the neighborhood. Yes, sir.
And what is the time frame that you plan on starting this and finishing this?
Well, I mean, if you approve this, then I'm probably going to get right on it. We had planned on doing it, and then we found out about, the coverage of the property, and then we had to just stop everything. I had a contract with one pole builder, but, I stopped the whole contract because I didn't know what was going to happen until we got through with this.
All right. Thank you very much for putting the brakes on and coming to us. Appreciate it.
Okay, so as a matter of just housekeeping, are you aware that the county planners have recommended that we deny this?
Yes.
It's a situation where the code is designed to protect residents in the county from flooding, essentially. It appears as though you pretty much are surrounded by trees, and perhaps there's some small streams in there. But I just wanted to be sure you're aware that the recommendation.
Yes, I'm aware of it, and our closest neighbor to where the building would be built is 67 feet away. And all behind us is nothing but wooded area, and from my understanding, it's nothing but wetlands back in there. So I don't foresee them ever building back in that area. And as far as runoffs, we've never had any problem with water running anywhere. And the ground absorbs it very well. We don't have no puddling or nothing like that around the house or any of that nature.
Okay. Absolutely.
So, a question of staff real quick. Does the existing shed contribute to the problem? Is that creating an impervious surface?
It does, Mr. Townsend. That is correct. We have taken into account all the existing impervious, anything with roof, of course, paved surfaces and all that was factored into this calculation.
So, Mr. Lewis, is that shed in good condition? Is that something that you really continue or you wish to make future use of, or could you accommodate the items stored in that shed in your new garage and eliminate that shed?
Well, the sheds are in good shape. I've kept them in pretty good shape, and I don't think it would help me any at all. The one shed, I have an old truck I've been working on for years. I go outside and I'll get bored sometime. I'll go out and tinker with it, and I keep it in the one shed that's like the carport shed. And then I have a mower and stuff in the other shed. So yeah, I don't really want to get rid of them. And even if I got rid of the smaller shed, I'd still have to take up partial my blacktop around the back door. You can see where the blacktop goes around to the back door, but that's as far as it goes. When I had the driveway done, I did that. So, when we come out the back door, it wasn't mud, or something like that. Or, we wouldn't fall and twist our ankles. But as far as the shed goes, yeah, I mean, they're good shape. I like to say, if I took them out, I'd still have to take something else out to get to the footage, which were 334 square feet approximately is what we are asking for.
Are both sheds on concrete foundations, or are they?
No, ma'am. They're on the one with a garage door, as you can see with the windows in it. It's a portable shed. It has the 4x4s under it, but it is blocked. The other shed, it's got like a foundation around it that when we put it in, we didn't have to have it at the time. We put it in, it was inspected, but I did put like a 4-inch blocks. I made a foundation all the way around it for it to sit on, and everything is anchored, and it was all inspected.
Okay. Anyone else?
Yes, Mr. Lewis, let's go back to the size of the pole building for a minute. In your opinion, a 25 by 25 would just probably not work?
25 by 25 would not work, sir, because I measured my truck, and my truck is all but 19 feet, and that would be coming from, you know, if the truck was barely inside the door.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Is there anyone else in the room who would like to give testimony in favor of this application? In favor? Anyone? Mark, is there anyone online who would like to give testimony in favor of this application?
I see no hands raised online.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone in the room who would like to give testimony in opposition to this this application? Opposition? Anyone? Anyone online who would like to give testimony in opposition to this application?
Again, I see no hands raised online.
Okay, thank you, Mark. So there's no more additional testimony for or in opposition to the application, so I declare A2206, the public hearing is now closed.
Next, we have application A-21-07 for Stillwater Builders LLC. Is there someone present for this application? Thank you. So the applicant is Stillwater Builders LLC on behalf of the owners William Clyde and Mary Sue Draper. The present zoning district is AR, Agriculture Residential. The proposed variance is a variance from the maximum impervious coverage permitted of 23% to construct an addition onto the existing single-family home. The present use is residential. The proposed is the same with an addition. It's in Levy Court District 6 for Mr. Howe, located on the west side of Thicket Road, approximately 404 feet south of Pickett Lane, west of Camden. Here you will see that the total lot size is 21,861 square feet. The permitted impervious coverage of 23% would be 5,028 square feet. The existing impervious coverage is 30.1% at 6,580 square feet. The proposed addition would create a total of 7,300 square feet for a total of 33.4%. Here you will see the front of the home where the proposed addition is going. Looking down Thicket and in the other direction. Here's looking around back. You can see some of the existing buildings that are on the property. And the existing building along with the driveway that's in the rear of the home. Looking down the driveway towards the back of the property. And the aerial. Sir, if you want to come forward, state your name and address, and allow our attorney to swear you in. And again, please write your name and address on the paper up there.
Kevin Stevenson, 2930 Sandbox Road, Milford, Delaware.
Was it Stevenson?
Stevenson, yes, sir.
Stevenson, Mr. Stevenson, do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir.
And I'm going to ask you to pull that mic just as you're doing. Yep.
We wanted to add an addition on the front of this property. Would be the contractor doing this. Just to kind of note, we did a contract in November of last year, and since then we've been working on trying to figure out exactly what we have here, just the best ways to handle this, and decided to go for the variance and wait. We have essentially an approved non-conforming lot, and the point, I guess, that we're hoping to kind of make is just that if everything on this property, including the addition, would be on a 1 acre property, which would be the normal for that area, we would be at about 17%. Everything on the property could be there if we were on a approved lot. So my point is just that the 23% seems to kind of go with a 1 acre property. Since this is smaller, seems somewhat reasonable that the percentage would be a little bit larger just for the smaller property size. So we kind of wanted to make that point in reference to the first bullet point. And then going to the area around it is pretty consistent. I mean, you can see from some of the pictures that it's a little bit of, they're all smaller lots. There is a little bit more items on the properties because of the size of the lots. There is a shed right now currently on this property in front of the house to the left, but that was brought in just temporarily to house things while we were doing construction. So it's not a permanent structure. It's on the pavement right now, so it doesn't even go against our impervious. And then obviously kind of a hardship would be, just not really being able to use their property. You can see there's some stuff outside that they would like to get inside the garage. We're also looking to add a laundry room that's a little bit more useful for them, and then also replace the front porch as part of our plan to give a safer area in and out of the house. On number 3, how we don't feel that this would affect the neighbors. I think it would probably bring more value to the properties because of some of the enhancements that we're going to do to it. And as far as runoff and drainage, we addressed that. It actually was already in the contract. We're going to run the gutter downspouts out to the front swale to allow the water from that impervious structure to go straight out to the swale. And I think that is about all we had.
Okay, anybody have any questions?
Yes, I do. You made mention that there's one shed. I have information that says there's 3 sheds.
Yes, sir. Apologize for that. There's a temporary shed just on the driveway. I just kind of wanted to note, there's one that wasn't really on the site plan. And I think the next picture would show it. Right there. Right behind the trailer. Yep, that's it. That's pretty good with the arrow there. That is just a temporary shed, so I just wanted to point that out.
So is there any impervious coverage now that could be modified to help out in this case?
Well, we could take out some of the rear asphalt to kind of help out with that, but it's still not enough. Kind of from behind the house going back, it still isn't, it wouldn't be anywhere near enough to add the addition. The addition that we're trying to add is, apologize, I have the plans here. It's a 32 by 24 addition. So it's a 24 by 24 garage, which will have a safer step inside, a 1-car garage. That'll allow them to park, obviously, some of the stuff outside in it. It also is a laundry room, kind of a foyer area.
So looking at this site plan, if you're doing a garage there, you want to bring a driveway up to that garage as well, right?
We were thinking to come in with a stone driveway from the, I'm going to call it the front left corner of the garage, straight across to the existing driveway. We were going to do a stone entrance there.
Staff, so gravel is not impervious, correct?
That is correct.
Would they be removing the sheds if they had the addition?
Ideally, the 2 rear sheds, they were trying to not move those. The front one, like I said, it's just kind of a temporary one.
So the front one that you're referring to is a temporary shed parked on a driveway, so it's already part of the driveway in it of itself is
Yes, ma'am.
impervious. So What is stored in the back shed at the end of the driveway?
Not 100% sure. The owners are here, so they could probably answer that
Okay,
on
we'll get
next.
some information from them because possibly some of the driveway could be removed if you're going to have a garage. And then the second shed that's on the other side of the property, the same thing. It just seems as though you got a lot of little mini storage spaces here. And the brick walk, just again, this may be questions I should be asking the property owner, but could some of that be eliminated as well, just to accommodate, in light of, just for a basic understanding, obviously, we take impervious soil seriously, and in light of the recent weather we have had for some time now, you could understand why people are having standing water who never had standing water right now. So I just kind of want to understand. And again, if you're planning on putting, well, a stone driveway, I guess would be okay. Okay.
Ma'am, the back shed, I know we talked about that at one point, about removing that, and there was obviously a cost in that. The addition that would be a little bit more of a primary reason for the addition. The cost of removing that shed was kind of hefty, and I think that factored into to their decision. But we can let the customers be a little bit more specific about that.
Okay, perhaps we can understand better what it's made of that would make it so difficult. And just for housekeeping purposes, the planners have recommended that this be denied.
Yes, ma'am.
Anybody else?
Yes. You understand that coming in at this point, the impervious coverage is at 23. The recommended level, I believe, is 23%, and the existing is 30.1. And then you're asking us for another 3.3, correct?
Yeah. We are just more based off of the 23% seems to kind of go with the 1 acre. Since this is a smaller lot, we were just, again, hoping to be able to allow more, kind of similar to maybe it would be in a town or something like that, where you can have a few more things on property.
So if I'm following your logic on that half acre versus an acre.
Yes, sir.
Basically, are you saying that the proposed impervious would 1 acre be 16.5 thereabouts?
So we did some quick math, but if all this was on a 1 acre lot, we'd be at 17%.
Okay, thank you.
Just to remind you that it's not on a 1 acre lot. Impervious soil is impervious soil, and your lot is your lot, and we don't take into consideration that the neighbors are donating drainage.
Sure.
Okay.
No, and I just, so the point that I was trying to make, it wasn't trying to take away from that or say that it wasn't a 1 acre lot. It's just saying that it seems like the 23% goes with the 1 acre. So that's what we're trying to do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, if you can be excused.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak in favor of this application? Thank you. You can come forward and state your name and address and allow our attorney to swear you in. Again, please write your name and address on the paper up there.
William Clyde Draper, 1850 Thicket Road, Wyoming, Delaware.
Draper, I'll let you sign in, and then when you give me the signal, I will administer the oath. Sir, do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir. There were some questions asked from Kevin that he probably couldn't answer. And I'd like to clear up that shed that's labeled shed in the back is actually a 2-car garage on a foundation. It's been there forever since I've been there. The other shed, yes, it's a shed. It's on a drainage type foundation. I think it's got 24 inches of large rock underneath of it. That guy came in and actually built the perimeter around it to retain whatever water runs off. It actually slowly drains into the soil. The other questions were, I mean, you've got gravel off to the side. That's actually a swale where my neighbor's water can drain into that swale underneath that rock that's there, because we had water standing from his property when we first moved there. So the idea was not to put him through was the problem. I put in a swale there with rocks to where everything can drain into. It is at ground level. We have a lot on the property, I realize that. We accumulate my collection of antique vans and trucks and waiting for retirement, but it hadn't come yet. So long story short is that, yes, all that will go in that garage. The trailers, there's the big trailer and the little trailer will disappear once this is done, along with the shed that's in the driveway that's temporary for storage. I actually had it moved in there, didn't realize we were gonna go through this, so now it's there, and I really wanna see what's going to happen before I say, okay, it's gotta go. One of the things that drove us to start this was we looked originally at replacing the back shed, which is the 2-car garage back there, with a larger pole building and tear that down. But the tear down and takeaway of that 2-car garage turned into half the price of the pole building with the dump fees. So we elected not to bother it and said we're going to make improvements on our house and the road, I guess the look of the front of the house, and then replace the roof because it's got to be replaced. There's a lot of things factoring in this as we do this project. And that's where we came to this idea, start in 2020, so we're in 2022, and we haven't got anything accomplished yet. So we're really hoping that we can do this. And if we have to move or tear up the back part of the blacktop, I always look at things that cost. It cost me 10 grand to put the blacktop in from the back of the house to the back garage. Once it comes up, that's 10 grand out the window. So I'm trying to balance this out as which way do we go to get what we want? At the same time, what do we have to do to get to that point? And if it is removing that blacktop, I'll just have to take the tractor and tear it up. I'm willing, whatever it takes, but we really need this addition on the front. One thing is, like I said, to get a better view of the house and improve the value of our house.
So do you currently park in the back garage, the back shed?
There's my wife's grandmother's antiques from her stores all in that back garage, so it kind of consumed my back garage. So there's nothing in there but antiques and storage at this point.
So currently you just park in the driveway and walk into the house?
Right.
Anybody else? So my concern, looking at this, is, and your testimony is that you already have this area that has standing water from your neighbor. I mean, and again, we can't just let everybody totally utilize every bit of impervious soil and come back and ask for more.
Right.
Or we'll look like New York City. Zero place for anything to go. And so it sounds like both sheds are totally utilized, the small one and the large one. I'm not sure that the small one would make a huge difference. But if there's some way you could compromise and reduce this often we see cases where somebody's gone like from the 23 to 30 because they put in macadam or something, and they doesn't require a permit, and so it just simply happens by accident.
Yeah.
But now you're adding considerably more, and in an area where there's already standing water in an area, so much that you had to put in
Right.
some stone. So I just kind of wanted to remind you that, and that has to be part of our
Right.
thought processes.
Yeah, I can understand. It's just that, like I said, we've been there since '89, and as far as standing water, the only thing that was created when my neighbor built up his driveway, so I created the swale with the stone in there, and it's worked. I mean, there's nothing really runs out of there, but it drains down slowly, but there's no standing water in that rock itself. The shed that's off to the right side, no, it was all permitted, and like I said, everything was done correctly with anchors and everything, and.
Do you know what
the
size
one-
that shed is?
Pardon?
The size of that shed?
I'm a little bit hard hearing sometimes.
The size of the shed?
That's the 12 by 20.
12 by 20?
Yeah. And it's another thing. I'm on the dollar and cents thing. Sometimes there's $25,000 sitting there between that stone foundation and that shed. So
Yeah, can you touch base again about the stone foundation that you did below that shed?
yeah, we hired a professional in there to come in and do that. He actually dug it out, dug down 2 feet, and he backfilled with his stones, compacted it, and then put little drainage tubes in there. And I've yet to see water run out from underneath that shed. So.
I have a question. In regards to the image that we see up here now, which way is the swale that you keep referring to with the drainage?
See where it says right there? It runs back to where's that tree where it says X, the center of the tree where the property corner is. It runs back there. There's another swale that runs across all the properties that's on that all the way down. They dug a swale, and it runs down, and then it runs in between the property that's on the right all the way back to I think it's the Army Corps of Engineers did the ditch back there, and then all that ends up someplace in some pond someplace in town, I believe.
If you had to put a number on that swale in respect to your neighbor's property line, can you give me a ballpark number?
When you say ballpark number.
Yeah, is it 50 feet, 30 feet, 60 feet?
From his property line, it's right on the property line because he has a hedge there, and the water actually runs through the hedge into it, so that's why I created it. Besides him, I didn't want to have to get him to take the hedge up and dig another trench. So I've tried to work with my neighbors. They're pretty good. So,
all right. So it's for the benefit of both of you at this point. It benefits both.
Yeah. Pardon?
That swale benefits both you and the neighbor.
Yeah, it keeps the water off his property, which that way if I build it up to where it would have backed up. So it was both of us together came up with this idea, and I don't really need. It was grass there, and honestly, it's less grass that I got to cut. So.
Okay, anybody else?
Yeah, I've got a question of staff. The existing impervious square feet is 6,580. And staff recommendations, this would have to be a motion that we legalize the existing impervious structure. Pardon me, existing impervious surface. So my question is, were the zoning ordinances different at an earlier date such that impervious surface could be higher, or was this something that was done that the ordinance would not otherwise have permitted?
So like Mr. Stevenson stated, this is a legal non-conforming lot. So it is a smaller lot, and it is legally that way. As for the impervious coverage, as Mr. Draper has stated, the sheds were put on there legally by permits. But as Ms. Denny mentioned, sometimes people do put driveways on there, and those do not require permits. And people just don't understand about impervious coverage. They think they don't need a permit, so they just go ahead and put down the blacktop. You know, that's not something that we permit and that we review. So unfortunately, it's something that gets missed sometimes. And that's where they're at here, because both sheds and of course the home are legal. I think the excess and impervious coverage came from the driveways.
Okay, thank you.
So, excuse me, I mean, honestly, when you read through everything that you have, and then when the guy comes to put the blacktop down, it's not like Kevin with Stillwater Builders, the first thing he asks is that, can we not? And to the point where then we start looking, and then he starts reading, I start reading, and then we say, okay, we need to figure this out. And then we hired someone outside through Stillwater's to come in and do the calculations. But when it comes down to driveways and blacktop, is that it's like, I can't find anything in there that says you can or cannot. And when you talk to somebody, even if it's, George and Lynch, they'll put a blacktop driveway down. They don't say you got to get a permit. So I'm kind of like, in one way, yeah, I understand it, but in another way, I don't. And we came from the town living in Magnolia on Main Street, so it's I've got more now than I had, but at the same time, it's a little different of asking for what we need, what we want to do and what we can do. And so we're kind of like, where do we go from here?
So the brick sidewalk, or the brick walk that goes from behind one shed over to the other shed, is that like, that's not is or not impervious by your standards?
Yes, ma'am. The bricks would count against the impervious coverage.
It's laid in, it's actually, when I put that in there, it's not really that big, but it's actually got sand underneath of it. There's stone, sand. Well, when it rains, the water runs straight through it. So it's actually, it's, that can be taken up.
Well, that's where I'm going. I'm just wondering if some of that came up, if that would satisfy somewhat.
Right. And I said, I'm willing from the back of the house back to what's labeled as the shed, but it's actually a 2-car garage, is that if I have to, I can take up the blacktop there. And I don't have right now, I have to get with Kevin to figure out what square footage that is to be taken up, so.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's important. I think I've done the number game already. So when we when we do when we make our decision,
You'll give me the numbers, right? Because I'm the bad number person.
No.
I'm doing math across the table. All right. Anybody else have any questions? Thank you.
All right, thank you. Take care.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak in favor of this application? If you are online, please raise your virtual hand.
I see no hands raised online.
Thank you. Is there anyone that would like to speak in opposition of this application?
Again, no hands raised online.
Thank you. Seeing no one else that would like to speak on the application A-21-07 for Stillwater Builders LLC, this application's public hearing is now closed.
Okay, the next application is A21-08, as there's someone here to represent this application. Great, we'll call you up in a minute. Just let me introduce. Thanks, Gustavo. Okay, so this is A2208. Gustavo Lovaton seeks variance from the required 75-foot front setback from a major roadway to construct an addition on the front of the house. This property is located on the north side of White Oak Road, approximately 175 feet southwest of Morning Dove Lane, north of the city of Dover. It's Levy Court District III, and it is zoned AR. So this gives you an idea, Exhibit B, of the proposed addition. So again, the setback from a major road, the front setback is 75 feet from the front property line. The addition that Mr. Lovaton is proposing would be 65.6 feet from the front property line, which is a difference of 9 feet 6 inches, and that is what the variance request is for, to be 9 feet 6 inches closer. So this is a picture of the house that will be added onto. This is looking, I believe, towards the city of Dover, west on White Oak Road, and this is east towards the bay along White Oak Road. This is the side of the house, kind of, and you can kind of see this is the general area where that addition will go. This is the other side of the house, so you can kind of get a feel for, how much space is there between the tree line and the side of the property. This is just a close-up again of this general area where this addition will go. This is from the backyard looking towards White Oak Road, again to give you some perspective on where this addition will go, kind of right in front of you. Just a close-up of that addition area. This is the, of course, aerial photograph, kind of close up. You can see the house there. You can see what's going on to the side, either side. You see the lot is rather large. It goes way back and is mostly wooded. And of course, this is a higher up elevation of the property. Okay, Mr. Leviton, if you'd like to come up, please, and just give your name and address, and if you'd write that down on the sheet as well, and then we'll have Mr. Townsend swear you in before you give testimony. Thank you.
Okay. My name is Gustavo Lobaton. I own the property 2233 White Oak. I'm here because I'm requesting the variance for 9 foot 6 inches.
I'm gonna swear you in after you write your name down on that sign-in sheet.
Okay. This is right.
All right, so Mr. Loviton, you've given us your address.
2233 White Oak Road.
Thank you. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Okay, and if you'd please pull that mic a little closer to your mouth.
Okay.
Or stand closer, whichever you like. Yep.
Okay, all right.
Now you can tell us why you'd like to have this variance.
Yeah, I'm gonna say probably like two years ago I bought the property, and I'm trying to make it look like a house, because the house that was totally destroyed, and the house is small, and I'm looking to. Well, I got the permit already for build on the right side of the property, owner's bath and owner's closets. On the rear, I got the permit already to build my kitchen and my living room and my screen porch. Because I don't have any chance to go to the right side because I'm too close to the setback line, I hired an architect to design it, and he did the proposed addition on the left side of the house for the garage, two-car garage, and we find out just like a couple weeks ago when I did this application we needed 75 foot from the main road. So that's why I'm here for the variance.
Okay. Anybody have any questions?
Is there a reason why, if you had to, why can't you put this behind the house? What's?
Because I got the proposed additions on the kitchen, and then it's gonna be too tight, and I got a wetland on the back.
Where does your wetland begin?
Excuse me?
Where does your wetland begin on your map right here?
You see the last storage that was on the back, right there, somewhere across that line, is the wetland.
Do you have a picture of the? Never mind. I see. So could you tell us why the garage has to go right where it's there versus behind the house?
Why cannot go behind the house? Because, I'm gonna say I'm not gonna have the enough driveway go to the right, and it's not like, I'm gonna say, I got the kitchen, I got the screen porch, and then I got on the future, I proposed it, pool if I have to, if they give me a chance, you know? And,
Your kitchen and your porch aren't there currently.
no.
Is there a reason why you couldn't push it back?
Just apply for those additions. I got just the existing house, and the additions you see is proposed on the rear on the right side. It's already I got already permits to start doing construction on that. That's why I'm putting the garage on the left side on the house and getting in it and go to the house.
And there's several houses currently now along White Oak Road that are within that 75-foot setback, correct?
And I cannot go straight because the house is not parallel with the land. The house looks like it's like crooked, you know. So, and that really not helped me out.
Can you show the photo of the house? So the driveway is L-shaped, and then as you go back in that photo, okay, that's what I wanted to see. All right.
Is that gravel there? Is that a driveway? Is that gravel go all the way back?
It's just that was too much mud, and then we put a small road of gravel. Yeah. I got my dogs on the back, so got it.
Anybody else have any questions?
Yes, maybe I missed it. I don't have a number on what's the dimensions on this proposed addition? The size?
The size is 30, I think that's 32, 34 by 24.
Any chances that addition could be reduced?
If I reduce the long of the garage, I'm not gonna be able to get it get into the garage and then go out and go straight out because it's the portico in there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I'm just looking at the 34 by 24 versus maybe a 24 by 24, you know.
That's gonna be real tight.
Thank you.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yep, go ahead.
You plan future development in the back of the property. Staff has indicated that you've ample room in the rear of the property to build a detached garage at a later date. So my question is, what exceptional practical difficulty would you have at this time reducing the size of the garage and just going with the one-car garage as opposed to a two-car garage at this time?
It's the size of my trucks. I really need to put two-car garage in there because in that area has been a lot of people stealing all around there. Across the street from to my neighbors, he lives on a log cabin or something. They steal equipment from his front yard. You know what I'm saying? And it's a lot of people in there. And it's a lot of people working on the night. So I don't know if that's...
So essentially, the plan is to be able to exit the house into the garage and then, have the cars parked in the garage. So when you are getting ready to get in your vehicle, you'll come through a door into the garage, out of the weather. And at this point, of course, the garage is located, whether it be macadam or, stone, whatever. At this point, the driveway is at the end of your garage, where you would come into the garage. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Anybody else?
Yes, I have a question for staff. When you look at this particular site, particular zone where he's proposing this addition, if this variance was granted, how similar in composition would his variance be to neighboring properties?
So on the staff report, Mr. Jenkins, I believe we typically look at other variances that were granted in the area to give you some idea of, whether other similar variances for front setbacks and things have been granted. And I see on here there have been 3 other board applications requested and similar, and some of them are for side setbacks and other setbacks. So, some of these go back 73, 1982, and one in 1991. So I guess in that regard, other setbacks have been requested in the past. And it does appear, and that might be mentioned as well, that it appears some of the other houses do not currently meet the 75-foot setback, which might have been changed not too long ago.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lovitan. Is there anyone else in the room who would like to give testimony in favor of this application? In favor? Yes, sir. If you could come up, please write your name down and give us your name and address, and then allow our attorney to swear you in before testimony. Thank you.
Okay. My name is Mike Mead. I live at 2196 White Oak Road. I actually was
Mr.
born...
Mr. Mead, do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. Yes, I do. I grew up in the property directly across southwest of Gustavo's property and was born there 62 years ago, yada, yada, yada. I've been there since 2013, moved back there. And the biggest reason why I think it should be directed, and by the way, Gustavo doesn't know this, the majority of that is wetlands. I've been through some issues. As you know now, this side of White Oak Road has been the city of Dover since I think back in the 80s, and there's been some issues with the water table there. The Delaware Conservatory Group has gotten involved on some different things, so that's always been an issue. But for the most part, that side stays somewhat much drier than the other side, but it is still all wetlands. And if you look to the west of Gustavo's property, that junkyard there was a Patterson junkyard. It's not in operation now. I know they've had some issues. You guys have probably dealt with some issues with the EPA and different things over the years that have come through there. So I applaud Gustavo for rehabilitating that house, building a beautiful structure. And he's told me about it since he first started, very excited about it. He didn't tell you, he's a builder. So this is what he does. And he immediately looked at it and surmised that the easiest way to get access to an attached garage, not a detached garage, an attached garage, that he could move from the house to the garage out front here, and it would be facing that way. And there's one of the shots that shows the driveway would come up in an arc. Well, you can see it there, but it was on the schematic that he shows the driveway going into the two-car garage. He has several vehicles, including some for business that he usually has the van up there. So it's very practical. It's a very practical solution. He could, if he went on the other side, he'd be encroaching by more of the setback from the side yard. He has mentioned about buying the property next to him, but yeah, that's the view that shows the hook in the driveway. Now, if you try to put it on the other side, he's even closer to that, whatever setback that would require on that side from the side. He'd probably comply to the 75 feet because it slants back that way, but he'd be in encroachment of the side, encroachment distance. And I just think, for 9 feet, 6 inches, and you mentioned it here in the introduction of it, houses down White Oak Road, there's houses that sit literally on top of White Oak Road, and it's not the safest road to travel on. It's a very straight line. Cars come up at a very high rate of speed that go in there. Again, these are problems that have gone on forever. So what this does too, it's not like he's backing right out into White Oak Speedway, as I refer to it sometimes. There's opportunity to back out of there, get your car front ways, and proceed on. Like I said, over 62 years, there's a lot of buildings that have been there, and I'm not saying two rights don't make a wrong. I don't know when that law went into effect about the 75-foot setback. There's not a site issue, as again, by the scene that shows the junkyard, there's no site views that aren't already encumbered. And down the road, it's only worse because houses are closer. So to me, it's just a solution, and as a neighbor, literally right across the street, I have no objections to this whatsoever.
Anybody have any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the room who would like to give testimony in favor of this application? In favor? No? Mark, anyone online? You can raise your virtual hand. Is it *3, Mark? Is anyone online who would like to give testimony in favor?
Yep, I see no hands raised online at this time.
Thank you. Hearing no more in favor, is there anyone in the room who would like to speak in opposition to this application? Opposition? Anyone? Anyone online who would like to speak in opposition to this application?
The same, no hands raised online.
Okay, great. Hearing no further testimony in favor and opposition, I declare 8/2208. The public hearing is now closed.
Okay, next we have application A-22-09 for the Becker Morgan Group. The owner is David and Marilyn Alexander. Present zoning district is BG General Business. The proposed variance is a variance from the 75-foot front setback on a major roadway to enable the construction of a retail store. Present use of the site is vacant. Proposed is a retail building. The levy court district is 6th for Mr. Howe. The property is located on the southeast corner of Willow Grove Road and Sandtown Road, approximately 1,160 feet east of Sandalwood Drive, west of Felton. Here you will see that the proposal is 52 feet from the current property line. Staff's recommendation is to meet 60 feet from the property line. That will match the setback for BG zoning not on a major roadway. Here you will see looking down Willow Grove, looking down Sandtown, and the other direction down Willow Grove Road, down towards Sandtown, and back at the corner of Willow Grove, looking at the site directly on, and the aerial. Mr. Street, if you would like to come forward, state your name and address, and allow our attorney to swear you in.
Before we get started, I'll be recusing myself from this application, as I'm employed by the company that is representing.
Name and address, please.
Jonathan Street, 309 South Governors Avenue, Dover, Delaware.
Mr. Street, do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. Good evening, everyone. My name is Jonathan Street. I'm an associate with the Becker Morgan Group here in Dover, Delaware, representing the application before you tonight. I would be remiss if I did not mention and did not at least acknowledge the fact that I was here 2 months ago on the same project. We wanted to let the board know that the company, as well as the owner, took the board's comments and the staff's comments and concerns seriously. We went back to the drawing board, took a hard look at the project, a hard look at the property, and kind of pulled some revisions together to more closely address some of the board and staff's concerns with the previous application, which I'll go through tonight with my brief presentation. If I can get this to work. On the line, I believe, is Mr. Owen, Mr. Bill Owen, who's the Executive Vice President of Pentex Ventures. They are the future owner and developer of the property, and he'll be adding a few comments and a few words here later on. Let's see if I can get this to work. All right, this is a lot better. To bring everyone up to speed, in case you weren't here, I'm pretty sure all of you sat before me before, but just to give you an idea, the subject site is on the west side of Kent County. It's about 10 miles west of Felton and Woodside itself. And it's in Sandtown itself, right there at the corner of Sandtown Road and Willow Grove Road, as staff previously indicated. And obviously, with our second look at the site design itself, we looked closely at the previous variances that were requested, and excuse me, although it still, we were able to respect those previous setbacks, it still pushes us into requesting another setback, which is, or another variance, which is here before you tonight, section 205, 174B, which essentially states that any property abutting a major roadway as defined by the state of Delaware's classification maps, which these two roads are classified as major roadways, require 75-foot building setback on either frontage. This property is a corner frontage, so we've got 75 feet on both sides of our corner. This is the previous application that you saw previously in January. Again, we were encroaching into the loading setback and the parking setbacks that were really the bulk of the conversation and concerns with their proximity to the adjoining residential properties to the south and to the east of us. And what you'll see with the next slide is we've actually taken the building and pushed it closer towards Willow Grove Road, and we've pushed it a hair closer towards Sandtown Road in order to get those setbacks, in order to comply with those setbacks. Now, of course, obviously what we're here in front of you today is now we're encroaching into the front setback of Willow Grove Road itself with the building. Now, as the council previously stated, we have 4 criteria or considerations for the variances themselves, and they are, as I'm sure you're aware, the nature of the zone, the character and use in the immediate vicinity, whether or not removal of the restriction would negatively impact the neighboring properties, and the last, and whether failure to remove the restriction would create an unnecessary hardship or exceptional practical difficulty for the owner. And if I can tackle these first 2 quickly, kind of all at the same time, what you see here is a representation of the zoning map for the county. It's clear that the property is zoned BG, it's zoned appropriately, and what you've got is these pockets of BG at the intersection of Sandtown, at the intersection of Holly Springs Road, in the Sandtown area itself, surrounded by residential. There's those 2 purple areas are an industrial zone in the county, but for the most part, these are the only zoned BG or commercial areas of any size within, and that line kind of gives you a scale representation of 3 miles. This is about as far out as I could zoom on the county's website before it doesn't show me the zoning anymore, but I would submit that the commercial zoning would extend out 5 to almost 7 miles before you hit another commercial zone property, or another vacant commercial zone property. You can see a little square, which I think this has got a pointer. There's a little, went too far. There's a little square of commercial down Sandtown Road, but it's currently occupied and is of no real size. So also the second portion, which is kind of the character of the neighborhood itself, what you're looking at is really the corridor of Willow Grove Road between our subject site, which is on the right, and really the next intersection of Holly Springs Road, which is the Country Cupboard, I believe, is a convenience and now gas. They've taken some strides to improve that parcel quite nicely. But what you see is a smattering of either residences or commercial properties that are, we measured them from the travel lane. We don't know the property lines on all of these, but we at least wanted to give a good visual representation of how the buildings along that corridor sit. And they range from 100 feet, which is directly across the street, to 38 feet, 35 feet, and two structures that are in the 80-foot setbacks. And this is, again, from the edge of the road, not necessarily from the property line. But as you can see, the subject site, we're looking to set that building at about 82 feet. So we're just a hair further back into our site than the Country Cupboard up the road. And this is a recent photo kind of taken to give you a visual representation of what that 81 feet from the travel lane itself to the front of the building. This is about where the proposed building would sit on our site, just a little bit further back, but we're talking about a foot, and I'm not sure we'd even realize or recognize that. But this is just to give you kind of an on-the-ground visual representation of the type of setback that we are requesting. The third criteria that we look at is whether removal of the restriction would adversely impact the neighbor's property. And we would submit, as staff has highlighted in their report, that the location of the building, as we have requested, would create a visual barrier for the neighboring property as they were to leave their driveway. And I believe they're talking about the neighbor to the east on Willow Grove Road. What we've done here and shown graphically is the front of the building itself would sit no further than the existing vegetation that's actually on our property. So it would be no more of a visual barrier than the existing, and frankly, it was existing and proposed vegetation that's going to be required to be there. But in addition, those yellow triangles are defined as DelDOT site triangles. So DelDOT has a nice little calculation that we go through for residential and commercial properties, and those triangles are put on plans. They're dimensioned and based off of calculations that DelDOT has on a nice little spreadsheet. But those areas are to remain clear. DelDOT does not allow any fences, vegetation, or any vertical obstructions as you approach an intersection, and that's done for safety so that the motor vehiclist has plenty of time, has ample time to approach that intersection without any visual obstruction, so that they can take stock of what's coming at them from across the way. This is just an on the ground. This is looking westbound on Willow Grove towards our site. That tree that you see kind of in between those, the two utility poles, is kind of the last tree on our property that will remain, and the building will sit no further than that tree, or no closer to Willow Grove than that tree. That's correct. And with that, it comes to the last piece of criteria, which is the exceptional practical difficulty, and whether failure to remove the restriction would create an unnecessary hardship or an exceptional practical difficulty for the owner to make any normal improvements for the property itself. What you'll see here, we kind of have a list. Any one of these standalone isn't necessarily that hard to overcome, but when you start adding them all together, we have a corner parcel that's on two major roadways, which invokes additional setback requirements by the county. We've got neighboring wells. on the other two properties that are out of our control that create additional setback requirements for us. DelDOT, in doing land development, DelDOT normally will come through, depending on the road classification, and will take pieces of your property across your frontages to allow them to make normal improvements, in addition to not only right-of-way improvements, but they actually take an additional 15 feet and place that in what's called a permanent easement, which does not allow the owner to actually make any improvements within that additional 15-foot setback. And lastly, just due to the nature of the existing zoning, we have BG adjacent to a residential use, which increases the buffering, not only the buffering, but the setbacks just for the use itself. Oh, that still have the animation. So those are the two well setbacks. I would be remiss if I didn't mention why one of the concerns last time was smaller store. Why not just put a smaller store? Why not just build something smaller? And what you see here is Dollar General is expanding their call it their product line, where the 10,600 square foot stores, which is what this is, they're aiming to bring fresh produce to smaller communities. If you really look at where Dollar Generals are situated, usually they are in smaller, I don't want to say rural, but more remote communities that don't have a lot of grocer type facilities close by. And this is a pretty good graphic, a pretty good representation of where the closest actual grocery stores are in relation to the site itself. You've got Byler's and Food Lion in Harrington, and the Aldi in Camden, which they are 14 and 12 miles respectively. I'm not trying to overshadow the fact that the Country Cupboard is just 1,500 feet down the road to the west. This really isn't meant to be in competition with them. They're selling additional products other than Country Cupboard. They have soft drinks and whatnot, but it's really focused on the 10,000 square foot store. Really focuses on pushing the fresh produce to give that access to the communities itself. And as you can see from this final graphic, what we have is the store situated on the property itself. There's ample room, there's ample access for the store itself, and it really fits nicely on the property itself. The property size and its location really support the use and the intended user quite well. And with that, Mr. Owen, I actually have one last point, and it's been brought up many times this evening, and I don't like to get too much into the weeds, but stormwater, and I know it was brought up last time as well. Stormwater for this site has actually been, normally before Board of Adjustment, we won't go this far onto a site, but what we have done is we've actually gone and done the geotechnical borings, we've done the infiltration testing, and stormwater for these stores typically needs to stay, for the most part, on site. We can't take runoff from the parking lot and just discharge it to the neighbors. Again, that's all regulated by the Conservation District and by the state. They would have oversight on that. But what we have done, this is going to be my fourth store, just in Dollar Generals alone, but I've been doing this business for the last 17 years. But what we'd like to do is we'd like to take the stormwater runoff from these parking lots and the store itself, and this site actually has great infiltration rates, and it'll be contained into an underground system under the parking lot, and that's really, it's going to be its main focus of discharge. It'll be through the ground. And with that, Mr. Owen, Bill, are you on? Would you like to say a few words to the board if you can?
Wait a minute. We need to ask questions of you,
Sorry.
and then we'll give him an opportunity to speak should he choose, okay?
I apologize.
That's all right. No apology necessary. Okay. Does anybody have thoughts or questions that they would like to ask?
Yes. Could you go back to your discussion about that DelDOT site triangle?
Certainly. Would you like me to explain it further?
Yes, just in terms of line of sight in respect to the neighbor. I think that would be the neighbor to the east of the parcel.
Sure. So The site triangles come out of a calculation that DelDOT, you have a what's called a decision point that is set either 18 or 24 feet off of the roadway itself. And that's basically at the head. Is there a pointer on this? It's at the head of that triangle itself. These triangles are very long. I think they're 550 and 650 feet respectively. And what DelDOT says basically, you can't have anything in that yellow shaded area. If you want to do a fence, you can't. And frankly, if your neighbor's got a fence, you've got to ask them to take it down, and on very few occasions, DelDOT will actually let that stand. Most of the time, these decision points, I can only point to maybe one or two projects that I've done where these decision points and these triangles actually end up on your property. Usually there's plenty of right-of-way and there's plenty of roadway between where your decision point is and the end of the road itself, that you've got 20, 30, 2, 3, 4 car lengths worth of area. And again, our building is well clear of that, obviously. We're 52 feet back from the proposed property line. We're easily another 60, 70 feet off of that, outside of that area.
So, in your professional opinion, the neighbor traveling north to head east or west there should not be any obstruction in terms of their view for exiting to get onto the...
No more obstruction than that existing tree is there right now. They'll have, if I can go to, so the whole front of that property will still be open. And frankly, as you can see from even looking from our building through the parking lot itself, you'll have 2 cars there, which totals about 18 feet off of that building. But again, you're still really no further than that tree.
So just another follow-up question. The only barrier between the neighbors to the east and the Dollar General facility is that tree line?
There will be 2 barriers. So there is that existing tree line. We have proposed plantings that are required by code, and also additionally we have a fence that is required as well.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else? Okay, so just for the record here, obviously the planners, the staff recommendation was that we allow a front setback of 60 feet, which of
Correct.
course would mean that you'd have to move the building back 8 feet.
Correct.
Math was not my specialty.
Correct.
Okay, so can you just address that?
Certainly. So we got caught up in this conversation last time as well, which is, can't we just shrink the building? Can't we shrink the building 8 feet? Can't we shrink the building a couple feet? The problem is, if we start shrinking the building, the building size is attributed to this new product, this new fresh produce product line. If we have to shrink the building, that product line goes away. They have so much product that fits in a building and only so much square footage in a building. And this is really what they're trying to bring to these communities, is this fresh produce. And even if we did shrink it to a smaller size building, they don't have a smaller size building that is that small.
I guess I was thinking more about, can you push the building back to accommodate what the staff is?
Back south. So that's where we got caught with last time, is if we then push it further south, we get into the loading setback and the parking and paving setback, which we are respecting. So that was a big topic of conversation last time, which we were requesting a variance from those so that we met that front setback. So in order to push the building back, we then start pushing that loading back closer to the neighbors. We start pushing that parking and that paving back closer to the neighbors, which is what we're trying to obviously avoid.
Okay, anybody else? Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, if Mr. Owen wants to speak, we'll...
Mr. Owen, Bill.
Good evening, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Would you like to swear me in first?
Yes, sir. Mr. Owen, if you'd State your name again for the record and your address, please.
Sure, my name is William Owen with Pentex Ventures, business address of 400 Penn Center Boulevard, Suite 1000, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Mr. Owen, do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
You can proceed.
Wonderful. Again, my name is William Owen. I'm with the developer of the subject. First and foremost, I want to thank all the staff members, council, and obviously all the board members for taking time out of your schedule to be here with us tonight and consider our application. I had intended to actually be there with you tonight, but unfortunately something came up that kept me out here in Pittsburgh. But nonetheless, I did indeed want to participate with you in this hearing. As John indicated, you know, we were here back in, I believe it was January, and we certainly heard the concerns of the board. And to us, it was loud and clear that the directive was to ensure that we had protect the neighbor specifically to the rear of us along Sandtown Road. With that, I went back and, you know, worked extensively with John, and we came up with a plan that complied with that. However, because of this property and it being so encumbered because of the various, you know, matters that John discussed, you know, setbacks and road classifications, permanent easements, right-of-way dedications, wells, et cetera, really what you're left with is a site where, you know, you fix one problem here and essentially what it requires is creation of another problem in the front. So the way that we looked at it here is we said, okay, well, there's these 4 criteria here. You know, let's kind of work through those and see how we fall against those. So obviously, you know, in terms of the nature of the zone, we're a compliant use, so obviously we meet there. In terms of the requirements as to the character of the vicinity and whether removal of this requirement that we're requesting relief from would affect neighboring properties, again, as John demonstrated, we took a step back and looked at what the neighboring character of the properties are. And we arrived at a plan where we can comply with the setback requirements and protect that neighbor to the rear of us. But at the same time, we're also in a position where our building orientation as it relates to the roadway, which again, let's remember all these right-of-way lines, setback lines, these are all just on paper. I like to think of things in real world terms. As you're driving down the road, the existing buildings are anywhere from 80 feet to, you know, one of them's a little bit further back at 100. Some of them are as close to 30. This building is, you know, at the 82 feet, you know, similar and consistent with the neighboring properties. And because of that, obviously, it doesn't impact you know, any of these neighboring properties. It's in fact consistent with neighboring properties, and obviously it blends and comports with the character of the neighboring properties because again, it matches in terms of the real world experience. The relationship of the building to the roadway of all the existing properties. And then lastly, will failure to remove this, you know, create that exceptional practical difficulty or hardship. And again, it does. It's just as John had indicated, this is a very unique property. There are no other properties in the immediate vicinity. We did look, you know, did spread out and look around here. Very few commercial properties in this area. Those that do exist aren't going to work, and they're actually even a little smaller than this. And really what we looked at is that this zoning here is built to be quasi, you know, neighborhood commercial. And the idea is that you provide this community somewhere that they can go without having to travel these long distances of 10 miles to Harrington or 12 miles to, you know, wherever the other, you know, towns are. And that's really, you know, what we believe we're bringing here is we're bringing a store that will provide, you know, fresh produce, fresh foods, you know, all of your, you know, it's basically, you know, all of your household items and stuff. I go to one, in fact, I have to stop at one on the way home tonight. I mean, this is a store that we believe really will benefit this area, fits really well within the zoning, fits with the intent of the zoning. And as I discussed, if we're permitted rather to proceed with construction as we proposed. It will indeed fit with the character and not adversely impact the neighboring properties. Again, I do appreciate everyone taking the time out of your schedules to hear this. And again, I'm happy to address any questions any of you may have.
Does anyone have any questions of Mr. Owen? It appears not, so thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak in favor of this application? If you are on the computer, please raise your virtual hand.
No other hands raised online.
Thank you. Is there anyone that would like to speak in opposition of this application?
And the same, no hands raised online.
Thank you. Seeing no one else that would like to speak on this application, the public hearing for A-22-09 is now closed.
Okay, does anyone desire a break? Shall we just move ahead? Okay, so nobody's responding, so we're going to call to order the business. We're going to close the public hearing and call to order the business meeting. And even though no one left, could we just take the roll?
Certainly. Ms. Hudson?
Here.
Mr. Jenkins?
Here.
Mr. Kuzic?
Here.
Mr. Nichols?
Here.
And Mrs. Denny?
Here.
Vote shows 5 present, 2 absent. We still have a quorum.
Thank you. Okay, so first order of business is the minutes from the February 17th meeting. I'm not going to vote, seeing as I was not at the meeting. So I would just say, I need a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the business meeting minutes of February 17th, 2022.
Need a second.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Hearing none, the business meeting minutes for February 17th, 2022 are hereby approved. Next is the notice of decisions for the February 17th meeting. Once again, I'm just not going to vote because I wasn't here. We are looking at A-2204, A-2205, and A-1405. So I'm going to need a motion for that.
I'll make a motion to approve the notice of decision for applications A-22-04, A-22-05, and A-1405.
So you have a motion, I need a second.
Second.
Motion and second, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any nays? Hearing none. Notice of decisions, A-2204, A-2205, and A-1405 are hereby approved. Old business? None?
Correct.
Okay, so at this point, we are going to have deliberation on the applications that we heard at public hearing this evening. I think everybody is still here, so we'll just go in order.
Correct. Everyone's still here. So as the Lewises were first, I guess the first one up is A-2206.
Okay, so we're looking at A-2206, Lawrence P. Jr. and Pamela Lewis. Any discussion, any thoughts?
I'll make a motion to approve application A-22-06 per the testimony, the medical issues, to be able to get a garage on site there. I think the size of the building is within reason for a 2-car garage. And also obviously it's not going to impact the surrounding community. It's within the nature of the area, and also the support of the neighbors' letters.
Hudson, I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Call the roll when you're ready.
Okay, Mr. Nichols.
Aye on A2206. I find that it is in character of the uses in the immediate vicinity, and it doesn't place a burden on the surrounding neighbors. I vote in favor.
Thank you, Mr. Jenkins.
Yes, I vote in support of the motion for application A22-06 based upon the testimony of the applicant, and it really doesn't seem outside of the general character in that particular vicinity.
Thank you, Ms. Hudson.
For A-2206, I vote to approve based off the public testimony that we heard. I believe the character and the use of the area does not change, and removing the restrictions does not affect neighboring properties.
Great, thank you, Mr. Kusick.
I vote yes per my motion.
And Ms. Stenny.
I'm going to vote yes, because for many years I have felt strongly that garages belong at the end of driveways. It's not just a convenience to the homeowner, it should be. And in keeping with the fact that this proposed pole building is going to be a garage for all intents and purposes, therein lies the exceptional practical difficulty, so therefore I'm voting yes.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Stenny. So for application A2206, we have 5 yeas and 0 nays.
Having received unanimous positive votes, application A2206 is hereby approved.
Okay, thank you. So the next application is A22-07, Stillwater Builders LLC, and William Clyde and Mary Sue Draper.
Okay, any discussion, any thoughts?
Did we entertain at all what that number needed to be in terms of getting them a little bit closer to some level of compliance?
Yeah, so to get down to the existing impervious coverage, 30.1%, they'll need 720 square feet of impervious coverage to be removed, either be the driveway, shed, or whatever. But also, I'm going to make a point here that shed that he pretty much did his own drainage for that per his testimony. That shed's 240. So in my opinion, I think we could take that out of the equation as well. It puts us down to like 580 square feet to get us to that 30.1%. Which I think, me personally, think we should keep at that 30.1, try to get down to that 30.1.
Do we have any way of determining whether from the rear of the house to the shed, if that would be at all satisfied? Because the applicant did mention that he would be willing to tear that distance up. I just don't know what that number is.
Yes, so, sorry. This area here is approximately 1,400 square feet. So he could get away with removing a portion of this, maybe about half of it.
Thank you.
For purpose of discussion, and I think everybody here knows I don't take this especially lightly, but in light of the fact that he already, and again, I felt exactly the same way as Mr. Busick did about the shed, that it should be taken out. And when you look at this gravel area that he designed in order to take the drainage from his neighbor's property, you know, there was a thought, my first thought was, well, could that be adjusted to accept a little bit more water? But it sounds as though the water goes there from the neighboring property and just slowly is absorbed. And so, you know, my thoughts are, would that not be the same case? You know, I too initially thought, well, you know, maybe he can just take out some of that macadam or something in front of the shed. But if, again, and I'm not an engineer, and so we're just having discussion here, but my feelings are, if that, and, you know, we do have some people on board who would be able to say whether that might handle it, or if we were to maybe have him just extend that a little further, if we could then keep the driveway. Obviously, there's, you know, you can't put anything over the existing septic, so, I mean, it's kind of, you know, the driveway back to the back building, and with the proposed addition, I think is very appropriate, and sounds like it's necessary. So just opening that up for discussion.
Yes, in addition to that, look at that swale system that I think he created between himself and the neighbor. Yes, right there. If asphalt was removed leading to the, do we know whether that would have an impact on that system or not? It might enhance it.
I don't know. I know zero about that. And my question would be, would that area accommodate the runoff from that driveway? But, I mean, it feels to me like it, I mean, if it did, it
Yeah,
would.
I agree with you. So, I mean, looks like, I mean, everything's running off to that gravel area now. So what's the purpose of having him dig up 500 square feet for, really, I mean, it's a cost. It's hardship on cost for that, for him to do that if that's all just running off to that gravel area anyway.
It just appears to me as though, again, you know, I tend to be pretty strict with this impervious soil. And yet I feel as though if that gravel area is going to take the drainage, then I would be more comfortable, because in voting to allow it, just because that makes this an exception to what other properties we normally would see like this. You know, I really feel the necessity to find a reason to allow it. And if we're eliminating the shed and then considering that this would take the runoff from the driveway, then that would make me lean that way. So that's my comments. And if anybody else has any comments?
So are you still in favor of the, I guess it will be 500 foot of asphalt removal, or no?
You know, I'm not sure it's necessary, but again, I'm not the engineer, so.
Do we have to first legalize the current impervious surface to get us to the 30.1%? Do we need to have a?
No, we don't have to.
We don't have to do that? Okay, so to your earlier point, if we were to just say that they would have to, could we modify this so that the impervious surface would be 30.1%, such that, as staff indicates, such that they would have to eliminate some of the impervious surface, including, we could exclude from that, I would imagine, the 240 square feet, to your earlier point. Then they could proceed with their improvements if we were to agree to that, and thereby protect the value of the neighbor's property.
Yes, correct. So you have to do a modified approval in that case.
That would, to your earlier point, that might be the way to proceed.
And so what would your what would the modification be?
It would follow staff's recommendation that the proposed additions would be permitted to the extent that they would have no more than 30.1% impervious surface, which would mean that they would have to eliminate some of the impervious surface already in existence, but we could allow for the 240 square feet as helping to meet that requirement. So however anyone would want to, I'm not making the modification, but that's a motion that could be made.
If I could jump in with, along the line of the comments that Mr. McNichols just made, it is not incumbent upon us to design the property owner's efforts to redevelop the property. And we can spend a lot of time thinking about how we could make things work, but it would make for a more enforceable, more clean result if the board could choose a percentage or an amount of relief they're willing to grant, and then essentially hand off the project to the property owner and let them figure out how best to meet that.
Okay, and I certainly agree with that. And again, then I'm wondering if it could be satisfied with, maybe an extension of this gravel, if necessary, this gravel area. So at any rate, any more discussion, or I'm ready for a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve application A22-07 to allow the 33.4% impervious coverage. I think the addition is in nature with the surrounding area. I think per the owner's testimony, he has done his due diligence within the site to control the storm water, and I think it'll be a hardship on the applicant to have him remove 500 square feet of the driveway. In essence, that all that runs off into that gravel area that helps the stormwater runoff.
If you have a motion, I need a second. He said 33.4, the proposed impervious. And again, I don't believe, and the planners can correct me if I'm misinterpreting, but within this percentage, they didn't at that point realize that the shed does have a foundation that it makes it pervious, that it makes it drain water.
Correct, but the shed would still be counted towards that impervious coverage because it has a roof. So that's up to you guys if you want to take that
So
into
we will need to
consideration.
increase that
Yeah.
30.1 if there's no second to my motion.
Okay, so. So we're still looking for a
Make
second.
a motion that we second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. When you're ready, call the roll.
Mr. Jenkins.
In reference to application A2207, I vote no for the motion based on the fact that the impervious surface coverage is excessive to go from 23% to 33.4.
Thank you. Mr. Nichols.
And I also vote no. I'm afraid that the removal of the restriction on the applicant's property would potentially affect neighboring properties.
Ms. Hudson.
For A-2207, I vote yes. I believe this property is very unique with it having a swell that we don't see many of those with the gravel pit. And I believe the moving it up to 33.4 impervious surfaces would not seriously affect neighboring properties.
Thank you. Mr. Kusick.
I vote yes per my motion.
And Ms. Stenny.
I'm going to vote yes, because although it, I guess, is not an exceptional practical difficulty, I do find an exception to the lay of the land here by the nature of the fact that this property owner has already installed a gravel pit to absorb some of the water, albeit from the other side of the property. And as testimony this evening was that the smaller shed does have underneath it, it is set up to allow drainage of the water that would have come off of the roof or been blocked by the roof. So again, not to set a precedence here, I think that this is truly an exception because there are already within the property 2 measures made to accept that excess drainage. So therefore, yes.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Steny. So for application A2207 to approve as requested, we have 3 yeas and 2 nays.
Having received required amount of, oh, no. I'm looking, it's 3-2.
So can we do
A modified.
So first, we need just
somebody
simply to announce that the motion
has failed.
for lack of a fourth vote, the necessary fourth vote under our rules, and then you're free to consider an alternate.
Okay, thank you. I forgot that we're down 2 tonight. So at this point, due to the lack of support, the motion has failed, and I'm happy to entertain another motion or.
I'd like to make a motion to approve A2207, subject to staff recommendations to make certain that the existing improvements still provide 30.1% impervious coverage. So it's only 3.3% more, but the applicant can determine how they want to meet that 30.1%. And that would allow them to proceed with their application and building, if anyone seconds it.
Can we have some discussion? So if we take that 250 square foot shed out,
You ought to ask for a second, and then.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. Looking for a second.
I would second that motion.
Motion is second. Now we can have some discussion.
To Fred's earlier point, Mr. Townsend's earlier point, it probably should be left up to the applicant how he wants to meet that modified approval, as opposed to us getting into micromanaging how they handle their property. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. So do you feel that 250 square foot shed, that he did his due diligence there to control that runoff, so add an increase to that a little bit, or?
My personal opinion would be yes, but staff says that the fact that it has a roof over it means that it doesn't count. So if he were to accept, if this is approved subject to that modification, it would fall on staff to determine whether or not, and it would seem they've already determined that it couldn't count. Although my personal perspective, and I'm not an engineer, is sure, why not?
Well, it's a matter of discussion. Again, I understand what the staff is saying, a roof is a roof, but testimony tonight demonstrates that the property owner has done due diligence in providing appropriate drainage underneath of that shed. And so for me, that qualifies. Again, as a reason that we might be able to deduct that square footage.
I agree with you personally, but my motion stands if, to the extent that we would want to make another motion to perhaps allow that 240 square feet and meeting that 30.1% impervious surface limit. I think that would be a separate motion, but
It could be, somebody could ask for a friendly amendment, which would accomplish
Would you like
that.
to make a friendly amendment to that motion?
Yeah, we need a friendly, amendment, as you all know, I try not to. So,
Does the maker of the motion accept, what was the square footage?
240 square feet.
240 square
140
feet.
square
He would,
feet
he would,
as a,
he would accept that, yes.
Okay, and the seconder?
Yes.
So, but do we need that percentage? Just to
30.1.
So is 30.1 with a credit of?
We'll need to increase that percentage.
So the effective, I can't do the math, but the effective, I guess what you're doing is deducting 240
Yeah,
square.
right. So it's like 30, we'll be at like 31, between 31 and 31.5.
Could the motion just be 30.1% plus 240 feet, and we could determine what that would be?
It would be 31.2%. To add the 30.1%, which is 6,580 square feet, you're adding 240 square feet, gives you 6,820 square feet. That would equal 31.2% impervious coverage.
So, just for clarification, if, and we have had the friendly amendment to take away, the 240 square feet from the shed. So at that point, then it would simply take, so at that point, we would be good at the 31.2. So if the motion were to accept 31.2%, limit it to 31.2%, we're good.
Are you both in agreement with that?
Yes.
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 Take roll right.
So I guess to clarify, so we have a motion for a modified approval of 31.2%. The motion was made by Mr. Nichols and seconded by Mr. Jenkins.
Is my understanding. Okay, so call the roll.
Okay, Ms. Hudson.
For A-2209, I vote to approve the modified
Sorry, that's application A2207.
Oh,
Okay, the paperwork has me a little confused tonight.
It might be safest just to refer to the motion that's before you to vote on as opposed to the application number.
I vote to approve the modified motion to approve the 31.2 impervious surface coverage.
Reasoning, please.
Gosh. I believe that the current impervious surfaces is adequately being drained into the gravel pit, and I believe that having the shed there would help with the draining since it's self-draining, and I believe that this would not seriously affect the neighboring properties.
Thank you. Mr. Guzik.
I vote to approve the modified approval of 31.2% impervious coverage. For all my reasons why I stated, I would approve the 33.4%. I think the owner did due diligence to handle the stormwater on the site, and I think it fits within character of the surrounding area.
Thank you. Mr. Jenkins.
Yes, I vote in support of the modified motion based upon the additional information we discussed in terms of the drainage from the shed area.
Thank you. Mr. Nichols.
I vote in favor of my amendment for modified approval to A2207. Failure to modify it would create an exceptional practical difficulty for the owner.
Thank you. Ms. Stenny.
I'm going to vote to approve the motion, I do feel that this homeowner has done due diligence, and I want to be very careful of not to set a precedent. I think drainage is a serious issue, but this property owner has already established some ways to address the runoff, so therefore, yes.
Thank you, Ms. Denny. So on a modified approval granting 31.2% impervious surface for application A2207, we have 5 yeas and 0 nays.
Having received unanimous positive votes of those present, application A2107 is hereby approved.
Okay, great. Thank you. So the next one up is A22-08. This is for the 75-foot front setback reduction. Yeah, Mr. Leviton's still here.
Okay, so any thoughts or discussion or a motion?
If there's no discussion, I'll make a motion.
Okay, go ahead.
I would like to make a motion to approve application A22-08 based upon the testimony of the applicant and the witness that he brought in. And when you look at the effort that he has made to get that garage in that particular area, I think he's done a great job with that, and it seems to be negligible, that 9.6 foot distance in reference to the entire character of that zone.
Second.
We have a motion, a second. When you're ready, call the roll.
Thank you. Mr. Kusick.
I vote yes to that motion. Yeah, that 9 foot 6 inch requested variance for into the front setback definitely doesn't have any impact on the surrounding area. There's multiple houses, residential properties that are within that 75-foot setback along White Oak Road. And I think the hardship to be able to improve his the applicant's property, to be able to put a attached garage attached to his house makes most sense in that area.
Thank you, Mr. Kusick. Mr. Nichols.
On application A2208, I vote to approve the applicant's request. Their requested variance is in line with the character and uses of properties in the immediate vicinity.
Thank you, Ms. Hudson.
For A-2208, I vote to approve. I believe the nature of the zone does not change. The character and the use of the area does not change neither, and I believe that the 9.6 variance would not seriously affect neighboring properties.
Thank you, Mr. Jenkins.
Yes, per my motion, I support it.
And Ms. Stenny.
I'm going to vote yes. I do think there's an exceptional practical difficulty that would be created here if you could not have your, if this were, it couldn't fit back anymore, it can't fit behind the house, and this property just can't accommodate this improvement into the garage. And I do believe that garages should be at the end of your driveway. So again, not to set a precedence, because I do see that there's an exception with the lay of this land.
Thank you, Ms. Stenny. So for application A2208, we have 5 yeas to approve the request and 0 nays.
Having received unanimous positive votes from all those present, A2108 is hereby approved.
I'll be recusing myself for this application as I'm employed by the applicant.
Thank you, Mr. Kusick. We'll have you down as recused. Okay, so the final application is A22-09, the Becker Morgan Group and David E. and Marilyn G. Alexander.
Any discussion or a motion?
Just in discussion, I think the applicant has done more than a reasonable job to prove his case for the variance.
And I do like how they went and took our concerns into consideration and were able to modify their plans to accommodate the neighboring wells and the neighboring properties. So they were willing to work with us.
Okay, I think those are both valid comments. I need a motion.
I make a motion to approve A-2209. Let me get this right.
So are they looking for a 52-foot setback? Is that what, as opposed to the 60?
I found it.
Before you make a motion, I have a question. Staff has recommended modified approval, and according to testimony, what the applicant would lose is fresh fruit. Now, I'm a big proponent of fresh fruit, but I'm also a big proponent of safety. And just to read here, staff recommends a modified approval of the variance from the required 75-foot front setback on a major roadway to allow the building to be constructed at the BG front setback requirement of 60 feet. Granting a modified approval permit, a front setback of 60 feet from Willow Road would not negatively affect neighboring properties. The modified approval would not block the adjacent property's views when entering and exiting the property. The proposed 52-foot front setback, however, would be a visual impact on the neighboring property's owners on the east and west. So if we could just have a little bit of discussion regarding staff's recommendation there.
I don't know if you had the opportunity to visit that particular site.
No, did I visit the site? Yes. No, I didn't. I don't think I was on the board at the time this came before us, before you. But I can only make my recommendations based upon staff and what the applicant has said, and they've indicated that the store would have to be a little bit smaller, and in making it smaller, that what would happen is fresh fruit would be lost. Again, I'll say I'm a big proponent of fresh fruit, but not at the expense of any safety issues. And if there are safety issues there, then maybe staff could elaborate on them. If they're not, if I'm reading something into that isn't there, then they can talk to me about that.
I would like to comment that I took the liberty of riding out to this site probably on Tuesday to just physically see what's going on in that Sandtown Willow Grove area. It is a vacant lot. I looked at the business to the west of that lot, and then taking into account the dimensions and the lines that was presented to us tonight. And when you look at the distances in that zone where the other commercial buildings and businesses are, I don't see a problem with that line of sight in terms of where they would like to build that building today.
From my understanding, if they bumped it back, then they would be in the problem with the wells that we had last week, with the neighbors' wells.
Well, let me say, I may very well have visited this. I'm sorry. If I was on the board, then I did. I visited all the sites and all the applicants that have come before us since my tenure on the board. So I may have visited it, but regardless, I still am concerned about staff's responses.
Okay, so I'm going to interject. I frequently go by there. And so actually 2 times because of the application, keeping the application in mind. Not only did I just go by there, but I made the turn. I went back, look, and really kind of with thought in mind and of where this sits and visibility, and actually then when I was coming back, I really observed about the setbacks of other properties, et cetera. And I really feel very strongly that, to me, the only real visual impact for the neighboring property is that tree that's up at the corner, and maybe somebody, I'm not a tree hugger, but I don't ever like to see trees taken down. So, you know, that's between, to me, that's not up to us. But I do believe that there's no problem with the site. There's no problem because of the way there's a shoulder on the road. And again, I do, you know, what I do now realize that pushing it back doesn't help or can't happen because of the drainage encroachment on that neighboring property. I mean, absolutely, with the changes, they did listen, they, you know, have made adequate changes, and I do think, again, as I said the first time, that area is in need of this type of store. And, you know, I happen to live here in Dover, and I'm like a mile and a half from places to get anything that I need, whether it's a Dollar General or, you know, a grocery store, a gas station. And I just think, especially with the prices of gas increasing and increasing, I think it is a hardship for the people in this community not to have a store that would have fresh produce and things that would accommodate them without the drive, the quote unquote, because I spent a lot of time on a farm in my youth, without the drive into town. So I'm going to, I feel that this is a yes for me.
Yes, I want to make additional comments, two in particular. I've noticed over the last probably 2 to 5 years, Dollar General has made an aggressive stance on going independent versus in shopping centers and strip lot development. And I'm thinking of Virginia and some of my other areas that I've been in, and I admire their marketing strategy to be independent. And I think that's a good thing from a business standpoint, but also it seems like to me when you consider this parcel, they're grappling with 2 major roads and setbacks from 2 different areas. So as kind of like I think an exceptional practical difficulty in my opinion, and they've made an outstanding effort to try to get this done.
I totally agree with that. You know, having been there, seen it, driven around it, again, I pass it somewhat frequently, and I really do think that, again, I don't see a danger because I don't see any site issues, and I double checked with that, and just, you know, based on the way you ingress, egress, the way they have cut off that southwest, I'm trying to think of my direction, corners, you know, kind of angle that in. I really feel strongly that that they have rectified and paid attention to what we said the last time. So if we're either more discussion or I'm ready for a motion.
Ms. Hudson, she made a motion, I believe you.
Sorry, you did make the motion. She didn't get to finish it.
I interrupted. I apologize.
It's okay.
But for A2209, I make a motion to approve based off the public testimony that we heard tonight. I believe there's a hardship with the neighbors' wells being behind there if they were to go back from the road. The Del Dodge straight triangle, site triangles also being another hardship. And I believe that the character and use do not change, and the nature of the zone does not change as well. And I believe removing the restrictions would not seriously affect neighboring properties, and the exceptional practical difficulty is there being a corner lot.
I'll second that motion.
We have a second and a motion. When you're ready, call the roll.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Nichols.
On A2209, I vote no, and the reason for that is I don't believe that the staff modified approval recommendations would present an exceptional practical difficulty for the owners.
Okay, Mr. Jenkins.
I vote yes in support of application A22-09 based on the reasons given by the individual, Ms. Hudson, making the motion and the testimony of the applicant, and being on site myself personally to evaluate the line of sight, the utility poles there, the commercial area, the residential zone northwest of that parcel, which is mobile homes, and everything that encompasses that, as well as personally having visited Country Cupboard numerous times in my 33 years working for Delaware Electric Cooperative.
Thank you, Mr. Jenkins. Ms. Hudson.
I vote yes based on my motion.
And Mrs. Denny.
I'm going to vote yes because, again, we're looking at this double-fronted lot. I do see an exceptional practical difficulty, and that they simply cannot put this store any further back on this property, as had been suggested in the past. I believe that they have worked with us, and I do, despite the staff recommendation, which is simply that, a recommendation for a modified approval, I feel as though we should modify it further based on testimony given and what we have seen in this evening, that there really is no danger. There's no, with regard to visibility, if we allow this 52-foot setback. I mean, I do not see any visibility issues.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Denny. So for an application 22-09 for a motion to approve as requested, we have 3 nays, 1 nay, and 1 member recusing themselves.
Madam Chairman, so at this point, we've taken no action with respect to the application, other than to make motions that haven't passed. So effectively, we haven't done anything yet. So that leaves this group with the same options it's had, for instance, with regard to the prior application, which is to make an alternate application or to move to table it till another evening in which we could have a larger complement of people who would be present on the board to vote. As you know, we've already seen the rules in play once tonight, which require a minimum of 4 affirmative votes in order to grant an appeal or a variance of any sort. So those are the options for this group, either to table or to entertain a new motion.
I'd like for us to table this until a meeting later, because to me, there's a hardship created by the fact that we're 2 people down and 1 recusal. And so I really think that I would love to table this until an upcoming meeting. So my question for you, Mr. Townsend, is I do have a motion still on the floor.
You can ask for a motion, and you've just asked for a motion to table. Perhaps somebody wishes to make that motion and second it.
Okay, thank you.
I make a motion to table A-2209.
We have a motion to table. I need a second.
I second the motion to table A2209.
Okay, so
Can I have a comment after that, or no?
No, a motion to table is not debatable, so let's go right to the
vote.
To the vote on that.
Okay. So call the roll.
Okay, on a motion to table 8-22-09 to a later meeting, we'll take a vote, and let's see, Mr. Jenkins.
I vote in support of tabling application A22-09 because with the number of votes that are here tonight, I would definitely be in the minority if I didn't table it, so that's my input.
Thank you. Mr. Nichols.
On application A2209, I vote in favor of my motion to table.
Ms. Hudson
I vote yes to table.
and Ms. Stenny.
I certainly vote yes to table. I think we would not be performing due diligence to this applicant if we were to, with this many people absent and two out and one recusing, to not have another opportunity to vote on this.
Thank you, Ms. Stenny. So on a motion to table A-22-09, we have 4 yeas, 1 recusal, and 2 members absent.
Okay, so having unanimous votes to table, this will be tabled until a further meeting.
Need a motion to adjourn?
Yes, and so my colleagues are looking for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Second.
Okay. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 That motion, that's, good night.